Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I am Lyndon Radchenka, sitting here with my long-suffering co-host, Zach Schuster, known the world over as Zach Schuster. Gentlemen, Zach.
Yes.
We are here to talk about the dark side of freelancing today. We here at Super Pulp Science like to treat every episode like it's a listener's first episode, and so we're going to give a little context about ourselves. I am a comics writer and letterer, and Zach, can you give us a little bit of your backstory?
Yeah, I am a comic illustrator and recently letterer because Lyndon lent me a really good book on that. But yes, I draw comics and I have no money. So we're going to be here talking about what it's like to start in comics without all the build-up that Gregory and Justin have rightfully earned over the course of their career. But we are a little newer to the scene, and it's not all just people waving fistfuls of cash at you at the start.
Now, dear listener, Zach just referenced two regular guests on Super Pulp Science.
Yes.
That is Gregory Kamichuk, GMB Kamichuk, and Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork. Two locally and profoundly successful creatives in the space, and who will often come onto the show and they will talk about the best parts of being a creative and going to shows and selling works and producing the things that you come up with in your brain. And we are here to talk about the terrible parts of doing that. This is Super Pulp Science After Dark.
Whoa. I like that. That was really good.
Zach, you are a full-time artist, and you are much younger than Gregory. Justin's age is a mystery.
Truly.
So I would like you to wind back the clock in the Wayback Machine, talk about your origins as an artist, and then talk about when you decided to go full-time as a creative, the trials and tribulations of doing so over the last little while, but also the good parts, and just be sort of as frank and honest with the dear listener as you are willing to be.
I will keep the racking sobs to a minimum. No, it's been a lot of fun. I've been drawing ever since I was in elementary school, is when I started to take it really seriously. I saw a classmate of mine drawing. I went, I should do that. And then I started drawing every day. And that went on until high school when I was drawing instead of working in class. And every parent-teacher interview was, oh, Zach's bright, but he's not paying attention. He's just drawing all the time. And then I sat down, disappointed parents, in the next one, which was an art parent-teacher interview. And the art teacher of mine, Mrs. Martin, I believe, said, oh, yeah, I think Zach could do this like as a career. He really seems to like this. And I was like, what? That's an option? She's like, yeah. My parents are in the background going, no, don't. But anyway, after that, I just decided to head to my local art college and took 4 years of that. Pulled a lot of all-nighters, started to hallucinate. Don't pull 3 all-nighters in a row would be my big takeaway. If you take one thing away from this, 3 is too many. You start to vividly hallucinate and not in a fun way.
How many hours is that?
Lots.
Zach did not 72. Go to math school.
I went to... Yeah, that's fair.
Go on.
Yeah, so I drew a lot. And then after that, I kept drawing. All through college, I worked at a little comic shop in Calgary, where I'm from. And that was my day job for, I think I was there 8 years. And I quit that 2 years ago to go full-time. I was down to 1 day a week at the comic shop anyway. And I went, you know what? It's time I just dedicated all my time to comics. I don't need steady income. And that is not true. I will say these last 2 years that I've been full-time art, I've produced a lot of stuff I'm proud of. I've truly used the time well. I don't think I've wasted this opportunity I've given myself.
Wait. Let's not get too far ahead. How did you know it was time to step away and decide to go to art full-time?
It was, like I said, I was down to 1 day a week, and I'd been drawing a lot, and I was just finding even 1 day a week ties you to the place, and I couldn't go to as many cons with like a job to get back to, and just one more day a week is a lot of time that you can spend making stuff, and it just I was getting some steady jobs lined up. I think that's when I started working on at that point. I think I was already working on so I had some steady money coming in from that and a couple other jobs, freelancing for the Story Engine deck, which is worth a check out online as well if you're a creative type. And yeah, I had that steady gig. I had freelance stuff. I had comics I was working on and just got fed up with working a day job. To get back to where I was, it's been 2 years and I had a lot of productivity, but I think it's time that I go back to getting a day job because things are very expensive and I went through a lot of my savings. I will mention, I also got a big grant, which we've talked on grants. I talked about grants on this podcast before, but that also went a long way. So yeah, that was a nice perfect storm of time to move on. And now it's time to go back and build up some savings and take another run at this when I'm a little more financially stable, just because it's realistic to, have that safety net.
Sure. Okay. So there's a lot of things that are coming out of this. I think what I'm going to steer this towards is asking you what your advice to someone who's considering being a full-time artist is going to be. And that's going to include asking questions of, sustainability and whether or not you need sustainability, because I think that something we say around the studio a lot is that you can always make more money. But I do want, I guess, to take a moment and own up to the joke, which is that Zach and I have taken over the podcast for today, normally hosted by Gregory and Justin, who are currently setting up for the Winnipeg Comic-Con while we toil away in the studio and prepare for that show that starts tomorrow. So that has brought us here. They don't know that we're doing this. Producer Dan is not with us today, and so if the audio quality of this show is lacking, one, I apologize to producer Dan for taking over the podcast, and two, I apologize to you, the listener, for taking over the podcast poorly. That's a lot of P's as I'm speaking, so
the audio is really good.
Yeah, I'm hoping that pops really well. But going back to you, Zach, and the trials of being a freelance creative, what do you think when you are thinking about sustainability or when you want to, what's the first thing that you think someone who is considering going to full-time art should really consider?
I think the big thing for me is that I have found I've really minimized my expenses and responsibilities to focus on taking a good run at this as a career. In the early days. I've got friends doing the same thing. And in fact, most people, I think, taking a run at doing comics full-time, they have more responsibility than I have. They have kids and families and significant others and expensive mortgages to pay and just more life commitments. I'm renting a cheap place in a walkable neighborhood, so I just got rid of my car. I have sacrificed things to spend a lot of my time making this, and the more time I can free up, I see it as buying myself time to get going on the comics thing, which includes freeing up my time and not having a day job. That was a big thing, but it's all just trying to equal or balance having enough time to give yourself a good run at comics and also not letting yourself suffer too much or put yourself in a hole of debt or time crunch. I don't probably take care of myself well enough. I should step that up because I spend a lot of time doing this.
Yeah, so when you use the phrase take a run at comics, what do you mean by that?
I think I want to go full-time comics and spend all my time making stuff that I enjoy and living comfortably off of that. And to do that, you have to build up a fan base and a good body of work. And you got to make cool stuff until you can make the better thing. And eventually that stuff, starts to snowball because you've got a couple books out eventually long-term. You're getting these royalties coming in. You're selling reprints. You've paid off your print runs. Things start to actually add up. And especially if you own the stuff you're making. I've probably been maybe too selective in taking on jobs that I get to own the end product of, which is less money up front, but long term, if you can sell a license to something, that's money too, and that adds to the steadiness of what can be a pretty good income.
Why is it so important to kill this Dracula anyway?
Because he's the son of the devil.
Besides that.
Because if we kill him, anything bitten by him or created by him will also die.
Besides that.
Welcome to Transylvania.
When you talked about wanting to step away from your job because it was going to tie you to one place and it was going to allow you to do more conventions, do you feel you do a lot of conventions?
I did more than ever this year, and I think I don't really need that many more in my schedule. I did at least 1 or 2 a month all con season. I don't do the Christmas market scene. I'd rather spend time making stuff and at home and winding down in December and November. But starting in April with Calgary Expo, I think I did about a dozen shows this year.
Okay.
And I could stand a couple more, but not tons more. Being away from home, even with no family, I can't imagine how you guys all are away that much. It adds up.
But even though you said that you wanted to be away from a job because it would allow you to be away from home.
More than I was. It was inconvenient to schedule around a fixed schedule and then do the weekend thing. That's tough for anybody.
So when you think about making it full-time in comics, are you envisioning yourself continuing to go to shows, or would you rather be at home?
That's a good question. It's definitely necessary to start, in my experience. It's a great place to get your fan base off the ground, sell copies of books. Long term, I think the odd appearance as like a more established artist who gets invited to shows, you're not paying a table fee, you're just signing your books and stuff.
Right.
That sounds a little more manageable than having to set up yourself and travel and handle all what is basically a large business by yourself. It's exhausting. I think it's an awesome way to start, and I'd like to long term wind down, but not in any hurry. It's a great thing for where I'm at in the field, I believe.
Okay, so in that case, you're saying what you need to do is build up a body of work so that you can be discovered by a publisher, because a publisher is the one who is going to disseminate a work large enough for you to get invited to a show.
Potentially, or something like I've got friends who are working just on steady contracts for the bigger, like big two
for publishers.
Yeah, the bigger publishers. We've been working with indie publishers, which have their merits, and they let you have your own like flexibility on some of the stuff you do. But yeah, eventually a steady page rate right now sounds pretty good. What I've seen a lot of the artists in the field do is they go work for the big two for a while to build up that fan base. Like once you're finally good enough to work for them, that's not the end goal for a lot of artists anymore. They want to go back to making indie stuff like I'm doing and own it, but with fans to support them. And I think that's the end game now. Is the big two used to be kind of the be all end all of comic work, and now I think it's just another step in the long and arduous road.
Long and painful road, because as we know, there are lots of horror stories behind people who work for larger publishers or in a work for hire capacity that we have or that we see in comics now, which makes me want to talk about real jobs.
I had a side note before we go into that.
Yeah.
Because on this line of thought, people, like I said, they're fighting, like they're making these comics so they can fight to get into the big two and then go back to making stuff they love. And I had a realization a couple of years ago. I'm in the fun part. I'm doing what those guys are trying to get back to doing. Just making stuff I own that I love.
So you're in the best part. You're making the things that you love, but as I'm not going to say unproven creator, because you do work. You do really good work. Zach is a very skilled artist, but you, as someone who hasn't built your audience up yet in the same way that you're aspiring to do, so then tell me, what is the difference then? Talk about the stress of this part of your career.
Yeah, I think the stress right now just comes from living expenses more than anything. In my field, I feel like I dedicate a lot of time to drawing comics. I love doing that. Cons are fun to see friends and sling some books and meet new people. The only real stress comes from toiling away under capitalism and making rent every month. I don't really feel like I have a lot of problems with my job. I love it, and if I could do it full time, I would. So I tried. Yeah, the stress, I mean, long hours, and I'm sure that wears thin when you're living in a relationship with someone like Lyndon and Justin and Gregory.
And Steven. Jonathan.
Everyone but me. Yeah, that's great. I'll dwell on this later. No, I'm kidding. I'm so fine.
So fine.
So fine. Sorry, that's a lot of dead air. My brain stalled.
Stress.
I rebooted. Stress, yeah. I'm pretty fried right now from the stress. I've been working really hard, and the money stuff's getting on top of me. Had some fun dental work, which is at a premium.
So if you had to, and I'm going to go back to the original question I asked, if you had to give some blanket advice to someone who is considering going full-time in their art, what do you think are the bullet points of the things that they need to consider?
Yeah, your long-term stability, a healthy amount of savings, and a time frame in which you'd like things to take off. Don't skimp on dental care would be good advice that I didn't take. That doesn't go away. It adds up and gets worse.
Right. There's preventative
many
maintenance.
problems. Turns out ignoring your problems doesn't make them go away.
Yeah.
I checked.
Okay, so then a real job. You're going to go back to You're going at the end of this show. Your plan is to return to Calgary and look for
Just like seasonal work for now.
Sure. What does that look like for you? And what do you think the benefits that it's going to like? What are the benefits you're hoping to get out of it?
In my head, I don't want to be like, I don't want to feel bad about quitting a job a couple months in right after training.
Yeah.
I like the timing of this where I could just go like sell trees or whatever people do around like retail. And
This is a Hallmark movie?
Oh,
We're selling Christmas trees?
I don't know. Well, something. There's
Sure.
selling toys. It sounds awful. And I'll hold my nose and do a couple months of retail, and then I can leave after the holidays and not feel like I'm screwing over a small business or something after being trained, because that's the whole point.
What if you like it?
I can't imagine I will.
What I don't think you recognize the peace of mind that comes from a steady and stable income.
I just remember being yelled at by idiots about toys at the comics.
But let's pretend
Didn't
that
love that.
you're going to end up in a working environment where your boss and coworkers are like generally decent people and
have
aren't
that?
going to yell at you,
That's a thing.
and you find that you enjoy the stability and lack of financial stress that you face. Can you imagine a world in which you have less time to make comics?
I'm gonna have to, but I can't imagine that and liking it. I really just, even when I'm stressed about money, even when things are hard, I sit down and draw a comic and I love it. Like I had a day the other week where I had been drawing my book I'm working on, the big one, trying to hit a deadline. Been pretty stressed about that, even though I said there wasn't much other stress. Deadlines are still stress. But
Zach, I'm going to be honest with you. I've known you for a couple of years now. You're always stressed.
I'm always stressed.
You were working at a comic store. You were still stressed. Like, I don't think you're getting away from that.
I took a day off and I was sitting at home going, I'll read a book. And I read a book for a while, had a coffee, and went, all I want to do is go draw a comic. So I went into the same cafe I normally work in,
Yeah.
and I drew a different comic as a break. And I had a day of doing the same thing I did the whole week before that, except this was rejuvenating and relaxing. And I just sat there and appreciated how much I love doing it.
Right. Okay, so here's a question. You said that your goal is to, at some point, work for a bigger publisher, right? Because you need it to build your audience. Do you think that you have a style that is embraced by mainstream comics?
I'm seeing more variety in the stuff that big publishers are doing. Like we were just talking earlier today about how DC has some cool artists coming in with the new line. People like Riley have been working around, like Riley Rossmo has been working for DC, and he's got a weird, goopy monster alien style that DC has been showcasing for a while. I think that we're getting in there with the cooler things and less house style. Not that house style's bad. We're seeing some more innovation in that field, and I think my art could fit, especially in the all ages spaces. Maybe we've talked about.
You're definitely an all ages artist.
Yeah.
Would you change your art style to be more commercially embraced by a big publisher?
I think part of what's holding me back right now is a lack of anatomy. I've gotten really far on my style, and I think it's become a crutch that I'd like to overcome by going back to the books and improving some of the technical skills of mine. So I think that would put me in a more house style zone, not fully, but that better understanding of how form works and like figures and form and everything. I like my panel flow and aspects of my storytelling, but anatomy would go a long way right now.
Right. So what if you, and we're just hypothetical dreaming right now. Do you need a sabbatical from making comics so that you can go get a job and go back to studying the art form? And you take a couple months and you go into your cocoon and you reemerge as this reinvented creative with a haircut and potentially a girlfriend.
That doesn't sound awful. That's not the worst pitch.
And you could pay all of your bills, and maybe you've like got your own apartment at that point.
That doesn't sound awful. You've put a good spin on it.
Good.
Yeah.
Because as you know, we talked about it before, and you can turn this around on me in ways if you want to. I also think that my path to comics making has to go through a larger publisher at some point. It's a lot harder, I found, as a writer. I was saying this to Stephen Call, my frequent collaborator, while we were in New York Comic Con last weekend working the Chasing Artwork booth. In the comics space, I read online somewhere that someone at a panel, comics writer at a panel, asked what the easiest or most direct way of breaking into Big Two Comics was to a panel of people who work there currently. And the response that writer got back was to learn to draw. And that's because in the comic space, as an artist, as long as you're producing new work, it doesn't even need to be like finished work or, a full issue or full book. You just need to be producing new work with new samples that you can constantly be drip feeding into editors' hands and showing other artists and creating some word of mouth. And you can create an online following if you wanted to, along with going to conventions where you're able to also produce art prints and produce an income from it. As a writer, you need to finish books.
Which often
That's
involves
it. That's the path. They say when
to pay for that a lot of the time. That sounds tough.
You're a big one. You'll be hard to digest.
I'd hate to be such a nuisance.
when writers ask how to break into Big Two, the advice is make finished work and we'll find you. And that's just, I don't, it's not that simple because, there aren't, we were at New York Comic Con and both Marvel and DC were doing portfolio reviews for artists. And I don't think I've ever seen a writing portfolio review for good reason. And that's because I also would not like to read comic scripts. Like there's no way of indicating that you are good at this job short of producing finished work. But as Zach said, as a writer, you have to pay for that, which means you need an income somewhere else that isn't necessarily making comics.
Which eats up your time.
Yeah. So now it doesn't because, writing comics takes a lot less work than drawing comics and a lot less time. And I don't think that's a hot take. I think that oftentimes on the internet we see, writers versus artists and who is more valuable in a collaboration. And the answer is artists.
I will interject here and say that I've seen a sea of people online who are writers trying to get comic artists to do their stuff.
Yeah.
And Lyndon has made his career on being I normally only speak highly of Lyndon behind his back, so this is weird for both.
I'm feeling quite uncomfortable
Lyndon has
already.
made himself invaluable in the sense that he takes on extra labor that the artist would sometimes take. He does more than his fair share of the grant writing and the finding opportunities and the networking and the talking with printers and publishers, and he has made himself very, very useful as opposed to just being someone who expects half the money for hours and hours of a comic artist's time. Lyndon,
I'll pay you after the Kickstarter is over.
I've had some of those. Oh man, I've had a lot of those. And again, that's realistic for some people because nobody has any money because the world is sinking.
Literally.
But Lyndon has done extra in lieu of pay at some points. We've traded work, and Lyndon has done stuff I don't like doing, so I can do stuff Lyndon doesn't do, and
Can't do.
That's a partnership.
Yeah.
More so than just some guy begging for free art on Reddit.
Right.
Which there is an ocean of.
I'm going to pay you when we sell it.
Oh my God.
When it's big.
It won't sell.
I have great ideas.
I had a guy who hired me, and then there's air quotes.
Air quotes hired, yeah.
And he picked me out of a long list of people to do art in his book, and he's like, okay, I'll pay, paid gig, great, okay. And then he said, yeah, after the Kickstarter. And I'm like, well, I've written, drawn, Kickstarted comics.
That are more successful than this.
I'm not even saying that, but just I have done every step of this. What are you offering? Like, I can do all that.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying better.
Yeah, you're an idea guy.
But it's like, yeah, the world doesn't need more idea guys. Everybody has ideas.
Yeah.
You got to make them.
Yeah.
And whatever your skill set is, you got to find to apply that to making them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently sitting with copies of our newest book, Dire Beasts, which required writers to be collected in the anthology.
And you did your first artwork for comics.
But that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is
We're so proud.
the artists don't need writers.
He's blushing, but we're proud of him.
No, the artists do not need writers in the way that writers need artists in this industry. And so to be a writer is a completely different situation than being an artist. I wish I could draw. Then I would be in charge of my own fate. I'm not in charge of my own destiny doing this. And so I think, I'm someone who has a semi-regular part-time job, like regular paying job, as I guess where I'm going with this, that allows me to be able to pay my bills without the stress of having to make comics to do it and do shows. And so does collaborator Stephen Call, who is also an artist. And the thing that is different from me and you, Zach, is that I'm not stressed about it. I'm just making things. But at the same time, I can't make things nonstop in the same way. Like, you have the ability, if you wanted, you could sit down and you could make comics every single day because you can draw. Yeah, you do this. You write and draw your own books. I do not have that ability. I can sit and I can write every day, but writing isn't making comics. Writing is stage 1 of making comics. You have the ability to do stages, 1 through 8. Are there 8 stages? I'd say there's about 8 stages of making comics if you want to factor in your lettering, coloring, inks, lines, pencils, writing, crying, selling.
That's 8, right?
In that order. Not in that order. Please don't make it in that order.
Yeah, I kind of spread it out over the whole process instead of just one dedicated
to save
bullet
time.
point.
To save time.
Well, I'm kidding.
So it's not all. But now, when we look at the other end of the tunnel, we see successful creatives. We see Gregory and we see Justin, that they do their work and they do very well, comparatively or much better currently than we are in our careers. And they have spent years building up an audience and putting in the work. And it doesn't sound like you want to have the same trajectory as them because you don't want to be at shows.
Again, long term. Like, I've seen the more established artists who just show up for guest appearances for fans and for fun and to see their friends and travel to cool shows that they're paid for.
Yeah.
As opposed to paying your way through all these expos to make lots of money. I like the idea of winding down long term, but again, that's years. I'd like to hit where Gregory and Justin are before I go out on top.
Now, if Justin were here, he would want to comment on the pro wall of artists at those shows because they show up late, they're not at their tables for very long, they leave early, and they make that section of the convention look terrible. And Zach wants to be one of them.
I don't know if that's true. I'm waffling. I'm indecisive.
Because, in theory, there is a road to you getting a pro table at those shows.
Oh, yeah.
That you have said you don't want to do.
Yeah, you can't build it up as high or have multiple booths like Lyndon and Steven. And I've heard from a lot of friends that you don't make as much just the second you're there on that wall. Because, again, all these creators are leaving, that row is just sleepier. Right. And you do better on average in other rows. That being said, as someone with no steady income behind me, to not spend $400 on top of flights and hotels and whatever else at some shows, just to have $400, you sell a book, you're in the black already. That's enticing too. So I'm looking at the option. Although with the kind of system with at least Fan Expo of once you have a booth, if you give it up, it's hard to get one back right now.
Yeah, because Fan Expo is the way that we should be doing things.
Was that out loud? I meant it.
Obviously.
That was out loud on purpose.
Yeah.
Fan Expo, I'm coming for you.
Don't take my tables, Fan Expo.
Yeah, anyway, if I were to give up, I want to try out a creator table at some point. And then if I'm wrong and it's bad like everybody says, which I've been wrong before.
Have you?
So now I'm trying to, recognize that
you've been wrong
made
before?
Mistakes. But this seems like one that I've been warned repeatedly about. So now I'm hesitant to try it.
Yeah, I've been told that when you set up along those walls, it's actually frowned upon to build up. Because you have space, right? You have the same space as someone who has a single table in Artist Alley, but it's not the done thing to peacock in that spot. And that drives me crazy because those creators could sell so many more books if they actually tried to sell books, which is why Steven and I are in Artist Alley and we're just trying to get end cap tables at this point. What do you think, do you have a vision of the step-by-step leveling up process that you want to imagine? Let's assume, this is the first assumption that we have to make for any person who's decided that they want to go and make art full time. Let's assume that your art is good. What do you do?
Just make sure every season you do a show, it's better than your last show at that same space. Build up, have more inventory. You'll start to see some regulars come back year after year that really make your whole weekend.
So you need to have new stuff for them.
New stuff for them every year if you can help it, which again is a lot. I'm making it sound very easy. Making a whole book in a year is a lot. So at least if I had no new books come in for Calgary this year. The timing didn't work out. And so I made some new prints at least, just to have something new on the table. I had a new business card for my board game that was a playable card in the game. I just had new things to give people that come back. Otherwise, they might not come back. So new stuff, bigger, better every year. Eventually, I'd like to upgrade to 2 tables, although I will note that it's easier for a duo like Lyndon and Steven to have 2 tables. It's a lot of ground to cover by yourself. I've run big tables by myself, and it's tough to be everywhere at once.
I've run 2 tables on my own before.
Yeah.
It was comparable
Okay.
with 2 of us.
Sure.
I know the Chasing Artwork booth
Yes.
runs a one-man show some days.
Yeah.
I think how that works is you have to structure it so that people can only access you at one point.
Yeah.
But that's a digression. Go on.
Yeah, that was most of my notes. Just bigger, better, faster, stronger.
What's that from?
Probably Terminator.
That must be it.
That sounds right.
That must be it.
So what do you remember?
Not now, Carl.
There must be something.
I remember fighting the Romans at Masada.
That was in 73 AD.
You asked.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that goes into making the decision to go full-time. And I think that there's an argument to be made that you don't need to go full-time.
Yeah.
Or,
There's no shame in having...
No, and
income.
some of the advice that I've gotten is that you should wait to go full-time sort of as long as you possibly can. Basically, you keep your job until you literally can no longer do it because you are so consumed with creative work. And I think that, again, we're talking about trying to find a life that isn't full of debilitating stress, that allows you to, build and maintain relationships with other people in your lives, if that's something that you want to do.
Yeah.
And being able to maintain the expenses that you have and the standard of living that you have. And there's no real easy answer to it, but can you talk about the journey in the time? Like, 'cause how long did you freelance for?
How long?
How long have you been going just art?
Oh, just art. 2 years, basically on the dot.
Is there, okay. So in that 2 years, was there can you talk about like the trajectory, the dips, how we got to this point in a little more detail?
So 2 years ago, I quit the job at the comic store that I mentioned, and I had received a grant.
Mm-hmm.
I think that timing lines up. I had received the grant already when I quit, so I had a big bunch of savings for the first time, just money that I knew I could spend over the course of a couple of years to pad if there was slower months, which was good peace of mind. And then I found a fairly steady gig freelancing for the Story Engine deck, doing some graphic design. It's not steady. He runs Kickstarters, so like part of the year it's very busy, the rest of the year it's very slow, which gives me the time to work on my own stuff obsessively for a couple of months. So that's a very nice balance.
And you sort of live off that money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had steady enough income when I needed it, and then time coming up, and then savings during that time. That seemed like a good formula for me. And it just, I feel like if I had have taken these same 2 years and not had a day job and spent a lot of these times goofing off, I would have felt bad about how I spent my time these last 2 years. But I have worked tirelessly for these 2 years, and I've made a lot of good work that I'm proud of. Like, I've turned out more books this year than I thought I would have even.
Tell us the list. What have you done?
Let's think.
2 years.
So 2 years. Dead Work came out 2 years ago, which I kickstarted. My board game came out, Wizlords in Space, Cosmic Cardtastrophe. And then I did...
It feels much longer that Dead Work has been out.
I know.
It feels like much longer than 2 years.
But I had 5 comics in that, 5 short comics.
Yeah.
I did The Thread and Utgard. I drew that as I kickstarted Dead Work.
Out of stress.
Yeah. Man, I lied to your faces earlier, dear listeners. I said I wasn't stressed. I am constantly stressed.
It's okay. I already made that point very clear.
Oh, good Lord. I got some soul searching to do. But I love it. What else did I make? I need a list. I should have prepared a list of this stuff. There's more. So that was all 2022.
Yeah.
But I think there was something else. I finished the book for Gregory, which comes out this weekend. Just recently I did Dire Beasts. I've done a bunch of more short D&D comics like some of the ones I had in Dead Work. I'm just finishing one up today. I feel like I've drawn 100 and as of now 34 pages of my Grant book, Broggy, the sequel to Thrud, my first book.
Yep.
I feel like there was something else. I've done all the art for my next board game that I'm working on.
Does it have a name?
Yes, it is Heapin' Hydra.
You're calling it Heapin' Hydra.
It's not amazing, but at some point you just have to name it and move on. If you look at a board game shelf...
Is that final?
Yeah. Die Hydra was cool, but you can't... It'll get censored by the algorithm.
Okay.
Justin's suggestions were all terrible. Sorry, Justin.
No, he really liked Topple the Hydra. No, we liked Topple the Hydra.
Topple. He had a really not good one. I can't even be nice.
Unstable Hydra.
Yeah, that sounds like it's like sci-fi shit. Oh, that was our first swear. I've been not swearing.
That's okay.
I told it I was going to swear more. I'm going to swear.
Super Pulp Science After Dark.
We swear now.
Where we swear now.
That's our tagline. There's other stuff. I've drawn other things. My brain is pudding right now.
Freelance?
Often. Freelance.
Did someone else pay you for stuff?
Tons for Story Engine. Oh yeah, shit. I did a couple pages for a thing I can't talk about that's published. Big publisher. I did 12 one-shot D&D comics.
You colored some stuff.
I colored a whole 5-issue book. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Spoon-fed to me.
Yeah.
I might be coloring more books.
That's just our relationship.
Yeah, I need constant hand-holding, metaphorically and otherwise. We're back to this again.
We'll link a application form in the description.
Oh God, I'm sure we will.
And no, it doesn't work because every time I've tried to set you up, you don't do it.
Oh yeah,
I've tried. We've tried.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it's been uncomfortable.
After Dark.
There's been other stuff. Check out my site, zmschuster.com. You'll see stuff.
So when did you begin to think that you may need to go get work again?
A couple months ago, and then I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And now I'm out of money.
Right. So what if it takes you a couple months to find a job?
Yeah. Worrying stuff. You should lie awake about that.
You should
try that out. Really fun.
When you return to Calgary next week, it's not like this isn't the 60s. You can't just walk in and ask to talk to the manager.
No.
And have them say you start tomorrow.
Yeah, no.
You have to go and fill in thousands of mindless online application forms and then submit the resume that says the exact same things as the form you just submitted.
See why I put this off?
And if you don't include all the keywords, then they just throw you out.
And then you have to spend a full day of your life. You could be making comics, selling toys to adults who yell at you.
That's right.
Around Christmas.
Why don't you go back and work at the comic shop?
I left on very good terms with everybody there.
Except for the owner?
No, we're all good.
Okay.
Truly, I left on good terms.
You should go back then.
But I'd like to keep my discount, and I don't know.
And your dignity?
I've never been accused of having that. I could work for the Christmas season. I could ask them maybe.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
Probably.
That's the same space. It's in the space that you want to be working in. I know a number of professional comics makers who came up
the networking
working in
was so
comic
great.
stores.
I met so many good contacts. I met Lyndon there. This guy across the table from me, we met when I worked at the comic store.
I bought comics.
I want to make comics. Oh, me too.
Yep.
And now we do it.
Yep. Your coworker kept convincing me to spend more money, and eventually you and I just started talking about making comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make comics friends.
You can't see it right now, but we're playing footsies under the table.
That was the sound of that.
You are too late, my friend. My children live.
Then the only way to kill them is to kill you.
Got it.
So which shows do you go to when you were thinking about doing shows? Which shows do you want to go to also?
I've been sticking to Canada because of the border nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you need to go to the U.S.?
I don't.
Okay.
I think if I did more shows in Canada, I'd be fine. A couple more. I want to do Toronto with you guys at some point, but that one without money to back me up is a scary big one to take on.
Yep. To the dear listener, he's referring to the Fan Expo Canada located in Toronto at the end of August. You may have listened to us talk about this in previous podcast episodes, but there's a large amount of overhead that goes along with that because tables are expensive. You have to stay in downtown Toronto, which means you're staying in a hotel along with all of your food and flying to shows. I don't understand why Toronto is not dirt cheap to fly to, given that everyone in the country treats it like the only place in the country that matters. But it's not cheap to fly there, and they have a terrible airport also. But it is considered one of the largest shows in the continent. Talking to Justin, I think when we talked about it, he named it top 5. It could be top 3 after San Diego and New York Comic Con, who sort of trade back and forth what the biggest show was. And, Steven and I just this year finally, I'm going to, air quotes this, broke even in the sense that our travel and tabling costs were all paid for by our performance at the show. And we paid for our meals, but that's not the norm. And, Zach and I have talked about this behind closed doors. There are creators that go to shows and are simply happy to make their table back. And when we talk about sustainability, that's not how you make a career in this. There's a point. You have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere.
Your first couple shows are gonna be rough until you have books that are paid off, actually making you money. It's the first couple shows will be bad, and don't feel bad about that.
God, we lost money for our first
you
while
have to.
because we had one book.
Yeah.
You need more than one thing. You have to have you have to hit a certain level of stock and inventory and selection that you can bundle things and get things into people's hands.
Yeah.
If you want to make your money doing shows.
Yeah.
I don't know that I think that shows are the best way of meeting people anymore because, for the longest time they said go to shows and hand out your work or show your work to people. And you can go to a show like Fan Expo Canada, which I would argue is the only show in Canada that has a number of pro creators, like pro comics makers at that show. There is a small selection in Calgary, there's a small selection in Montreal, but Toronto is the largest one. I don't know what the selection is like in Edmonton.
It wasn't, I had a lovely chat with Nick Bradshaw, who is one of my favorites in the business right now at Edmonton. So there's people there I want to see every year, but it's like
it's not large.
3.
But the other thing you come to realize is that the artists and writers at those shows are not the decision makers at those publishers. They are not the ones that can give you a job. Yeah. They are also work for hire talent. You need to go to shows that have editors at them. Those are the bigger shows. That's your New York, that's your San Diego. The issue with New York and San Diego is those editors are so busy, they do not have time to meet you. I was in New York last week, and there was an editor that I have been emailing regularly about trying to find work with, and they were at the show, and they said, I'm going to be there. Come stop by the booth, and I just wanted to introduce myself in person. I stopped by that booth 4 times over the weekend, and they weren't there because they're busy, and it's a very reputable publisher. I'd love to work with them one day, but those aren't the shows where you meet people. So how is it that you find regular work at these huge publishers when it's a very small subset of people that can give you work, and you have to be fortunate enough to, one, do good work, find out how to contact these people, contact them, have them actually see it, have the time to review it, like it, and respond to it, and then manage to find that one gap in the calendar, the publishing calendar, where they actually have work that they can give out. It's increasingly difficult, I feel, and that's why I think it's hard for me to say to someone that they should go full-time art if they're trying to break in that commercial way, because there's no way to quantify how long it's going to take to do that. I think I'm in a uniquely convenient position in that the job that I work is remote. I can travel with it. I can do shows. The hours are very flexible. But so I'm able to go to these shows, and I've been trying to meet these editors, and it's so difficult. Even when they like your work, it's so difficult because then they need to like it and they need to have work to give you. And if I was doing art full time, I would feel like I was spinning my wheels all the time without sort of an upward progression. And that's why I think it's important when you're looking as a creative to have more than one track in leveling up. There's looking to get into your published work, your commercial work, and then there's also trying to generate revenue from doing shows, which, as Zach said, is very time intensive, work intensive. It's going to put a strain on your relationships in your life if you're in a situation where you're not able to easily travel to shows. And I don't know that there's an easy answer to that, except to, communicate with the people in your life and make the best of it, because even at the beginning, you're not going to necessarily make a bunch of money. You're going to struggle, and you hope year over year, show after show, that your income is going to increase, but you can't guarantee it. You have to sort of go into the whole creative situation eyes open. And I think it's really important for newer creatives to recognize that the current market is not the market that existed 10 years ago. I would say that we're currently, I'm not going to say comics are dead. That's not which is the common refrain on the internet, is that we're in a bit of a lull. I would say there is a bit of a lull as far as conventions go. I think sort of the novelty has come off a little bit. We are no longer in the Marvel boom. We're in sort of this growing anime space. And I'm interested to see how that's going to change the market. And I don't know what that's going to mean for people like us who go to these shows and try and sell our work by hand. Because I think when we were in Toronto, Stephen and I were one of, less than 10 booths in Artist Alley that were selling original comics work. And that was both like, oh my God, you guys sell comics, when the people who are there to buy comics actually found us. But there's a lot of people out there that aren't looking for comics. And I wish that there was another space where you could find those people.
Well, we have our little local shows like Panel 1 for Calgary and Prairie Comics Fest here, where it truly is just people walk up to your table and go, I'd like to buy your indie comics. You're like, what? Okay, yeah, right this way.
Yeah.
Whereas Expo, it feels like a bit of a battle because people are there for the celebrities and the movies, and it's just become a pop culture icon thing instead of comic specific, and that's just things growing and changing, and that happens.
Yeah.
But those little local shows are worth supporting. Look up your local comic shows. That's where the cool stuff is.
Yeah.
The vibes are always great. The tables are always cheap. That's a great way to start trying to see if you want a table, is your local small comic specific show.
Sure, yes.
Tables are like $50 instead of $400, and you can take that risk and you can meet great people who are doing what you're doing. Local shows are fantastic.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, there's VanCaf in Vancouver, Panel 1 in Alberta. Are they in Edmonton and Calgary?
There's, in theory, soon moving up to Edmonton.
Okay.
It has a couple shows, like AGA puts one on that's okay, I think. There's a couple little ones in Edmonton, too.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably something in Saskatchewan, but I'm not as familiar.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here in Manitoba, we have Prairie Comics Festival, which was wonderful this year. There's the Toronto Comics Arts Festival, TCAF, in Toronto, obviously. I know there's a growing or a new show in Nova Scotia, in Halifax, I believe, Comic Arts Festival. So there's probably going to be one across the country, wherever it is you're living. I mean, I think the French market is huge on their, like in Quebec, I think they're huge on their indie comics also. So there's definitely space for you to go and table, and you should probably start there because the bigger shows are very expensive. And Steven and I, not jokingly, said our net gain after the Prairie Comics Fest was greater than the Toronto show, despite the fact that the Toronto show had, 20 times, 30 times more attendees. I don't know if those are actual numbers. I'm just ballparking. Than the Prairie Comics Fest. But the people who went to Prairie Comics Fest were there to buy comic books. They're not there to buy Funko Pops or mass-produced Alibaba knitted things, dice. Yeah, knitted
Alibaba.
dice. Yeah.
The big competitor of comic sellers everywhere.
My God. Yeah. So there's definitely ways that you can go full-time in art, but I think what I want to sort of start wrapping this conversation up with is by saying that you should be cautious about doing it full-time.
There's no shame in doing both. I had a good run at this. I spent my time well, but you need money to live, and you need to live to keep making comics, as has been explained to me. So,
if you could go back, would you do anything differently?
No.
You would
maybe would have looked into getting some money coming in a little earlier than right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I got hit by a couple unexpected things, like a big trip that we had to pay for last minute, dental bills.
Yeah.
They cleaned out my savings faster than I expected, which happens, which is why you need savings. Other than that, I don't regret it. I used those 2 years really well, and it will, when I look back on my career, those 2 years will have been pivotal. I figured so much out about my art. I made good stuff that I'm selling already.
Mm-hmm.
I really have no complaints besides the fact that capitalism is bad and hard.
Sure. Would you, so up to like, say, 3 months ago, you're saying, 4 months ago, you do everything the exact same. Would you have changed your approach to shows? Would you have stayed? Do you think you left your job at the right time?
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, I really think, I kind of knew when I quit my job. I didn't ever think that was, I'd hoped it would take off and be forever. I fully expected this to happen. And 2 years was great. That was some of the best 2 years of my life.
So did you go in then with a window saying like, I'm only going to do this for X amount of time?
I had a savings cutoff in my mind.
Okay.
And then
How far ago was that? Yeah.
It just all went out at once.
Okay.
It was just like a really quick couple of months of like, oh, and we're done.
Yeah.
Okay. Bad.
Okay. So like when you originally quit your job, you didn't have a timeline saying I'm going to do this for 2 years, then I'm going to get a job again.
No, because long term, I know that this is the only thing that makes sense for me to do.
Yeah.
Everything else isn't what I love.
Right.
So I've always known I'll keep throwing myself at this until I dash myself against the rocks or make it.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't maybe plan ahead enough because I know I'm just going to get right back in the fight.
Yeah.
As soon as I have a couple more bucks in my bank account.
Okay. And your advice then to the listener?
Join the fight, make comics.
No. That's my line. We'll get to that.
I know.
It's too early for that.
Okay.
No, we're talking
That's good
about
advice, though.
the challenges that go along. What are the sort of things that you think someone should expect in terms of what the big challenges are going to be if they're going to go full time?
Just the big challenge for me is always balancing time creating versus steady income.
Sure.
And you'll have to find your own thing that works for how you set your life up and the people in it. I can't really answer that one, I guess.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good time to wrap things up. As I always say on this podcast, this has been Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made, and today talked about the dark side of making comics. This is Lyndon Radchenka, encouraging you all to join the fight and make comics.
Yeah, that was better.